So first of all, thank you everyone for coming to this talk. I know you've got a lot of choice out there today, and it's great to see such a full crowd here. I'm going to be talking about the big data journey here, but before we get into that, I'll just quickly introduce myself and the business I work for, Cynozure. So it's pronounced Cynozure. Most people get that wrong. We're a data and analytics strategy consultancy, so we help people define data strategies and implement them in a nutshell. I'm the CTO there. My background is in building and designing and delivering data platforms, both from consultancy and in-house for businesses as well. So if you want to find out more about us, we've got a stand just over there, so swing by. I kind of won't talk anymore about what we do. So let's get straight into the big data journey. So I guess there's a few caveats we should start with, because there's a lot of different people in here who are going to have come from organizations 50,000 strong down to 3 people, and all of your journeys going from nothing to something are going to be different. You're all going to be tackling different use cases. You're all going to have very different amounts of budgets, skills, and so on. So not everything that I talk about will apply to everyone here, and this is kind of aimed at medium to larger organizations, particularly probably places where you maybe struggle with bureaucracy a little bit and getting things started and off the ground and building the kind of case of what you're doing. And because there's so many different use cases and different technologies that you can pick as well, I've kind of done this around building out general analytics capabilities and data science capabilities within the business and the platforms that you need to do that. So some of you might talk about that as a data lake, but it's a relatively kind of general set of use cases in terms of platform. And what we'll do is we'll sort of step through the key miles, so how we go from nothing at all, where you are trying to establish the data agenda within your business, trying to get the buy-in and the budget to do something, and maybe you're struggling to do that, all the way through to getting those first people in, getting that platform picked and installed, and taking it through to kind of an established, slick oiled machine that's just running and delivering what you want it to be delivering.
They're not on the stage, don't worry.
We'll see how timing goes, but I might try and focus a little bit more on the first 2 or 3 stages, because I think they're probably the most important. I won't do audience participation, but it'd be interesting to know afterwards if you are early on in your journeys, if you're already quite mature, if you're looking to change direction because stuff has not gone the way you want it to. But come and speak to me afterwards and ask any further questions if you want. So the first stage, establishing the data agenda, is all about that point where you know that you want to do something with data. Maybe you already know your use case, maybe you don't, maybe you just kind of know data's a really important thing and you should be doing something with it, or your competitors are doing something with it, or your friends are, and you need to do something. So how do you go about getting off that initial ground and starting to build momentum within your business to build something, to do something with data? So this phase is all about value definition, getting buy-in with the right stakeholders in your business, and kind of getting enough momentum to actually get started on things. So there's a whole load of different bits that you're going to be doing. And starting kind of at the top, you need to get buy-in from the senior stakeholders in your business. They need to be convinced that they should spend the money from their department, from their budget, on your project and on your platform, and that it's got real value to them and to the business if they're going to do that. There's a whole load of different ways that you can go about that, but things we've seen be successful before is initially like get a steering group together and get it as senior in the business if you can. If that's board level, if that's C-level, all the better. If that's heads of departments, whatever, however you're structured, as senior as you can get, the better. And you need to woo them a bit. So take them on trips. You can organize to see people like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, AWS. Get them out, see the data centers, get them to speak to other clients that have done a really good implementation of something, and kind of get them excited and jealous of their competitors and peers so that they want to do something. And it's really important that it's joined up leadership between the tech side and the business side. So my colleague and CEO Jason and I both hate talking about IT and business, and I bet everyone in the room does that at some point, but it's kind of a reality of how most of our organizations end up being structured. But what you need to do is make sure that this drive and this initial wave of momentum is coming from leadership on both sides and there's buy-in on both sides, because if you've only got one, it's going to fail. You need them to be coming together. If this is driven just as like a tech project that's seen as someone having a bit of fun and wanting to spend some money, and you just want to put in Hadoop because it's great on your CV, it's not going to get off the ground. Likewise, if the business side, they look like they're kind of just running ahead and doing their own thing and aren't collaborating with IT, it's a quick way to piss off all the people that you need to give you data to support your platform and so on. Hiring data-focused leaders, obviously in that as well, you probably don't have a choice about that at the start, but as an organization, if you have those headcounts, think about people like what's the role a CDO could have and could play in your business. So if anyone's sticking around afterwards, Caroline and Peter are doing their CDO playbook book launch. That kind of role at that kind of level is a great way to push a data agenda within your business. Proving you can do something different is also really important, because I'm sure everyone has some kind of database and some kind of platform, and it's maybe they've got a data warehouse that's been around a few years, you've got reporting. You've got to convince people that there's a reason you want to change technologies, bring in something new and try and do something new, and it's because you can't solve a problem that's really valuable to your business within the current limitations of your technology, and that it's not a simple fix, that you need to do something new. Use cases and really important value definition of use cases is something people shy away from a lot at this stage, but it's incredibly compelling to do a value engineering piece where you work out that using this new capability, you can, say, increase customer retention by 5%, and that would have an X% increase on margin and bottom line, so that you can actually put some monetary figures. We talk to quite a lot of people who look to try and fund their projects by the return that they're going to generate, so they become entirely self-funding, which is an incredibly strong case to make when you're trying to start a platform, because you're essentially saying, I'm not going to cost you anything, I'm going to make you money, and my cost is going to be covered in that money I'm making. And early on, and you'll refine this, and we'll see more of this later, but you probably want to start thinking about the technology that you're going to use, because that's going to drive a lot of the use cases that you can deliver, and a lot of the parts of the next stage. So it is something you actually kind of need to do early on. Even just getting an understanding of costs. If you're going to go with a really expensive vendor, or you're massive and you're going to need tons and tons of cloud power, you kind of want to know that kind of thing early up, and it's worth doing that before you get too far down and realize you can't afford it. So once we've kind of got our data agenda, we've built our steering groups, we've got the buy-in, we've got some use cases that we think we're going to go after, and they've got some value, you actually kind of need to start. And again, we speak to lots of people who have real difficulty about how do I actually practically begin doing something from nothing, especially if there hasn't previously been a huge data analytics kind of focus within the business. So this bit is all about getting the right people in, laying the groundwork for your platform, and sort of doing some POCs and trying to get some early sight of value from the business. So I'm a huge, huge believer in people, and I don't think you'll do anything more important than get the right people to get this started. And I'm really thinking, when I say people here, who's the development team who's going to build what you're doing? Who's actually going to come in, get a platform up and running, get some data on it, start to run the kind of use cases you need? And you want those people to be leaders. You want them to be people who feel ownership and responsibility for the solution they're delivering, and who are capable of kind of creative thinking about how you're going to solve these problems at an early stage. It's really not a bad thing at this point to make mistakes, to try things that don't work, and to kind of find your way through a bit, and you need people who can do that. So you're probably at this point, and the reason I've called it like a core team is it's going to be a pretty small group of people, just from, in most cases, just the pure budgetary constraints and the HR headcount stuff that you need to get approved. You're probably only hiring 1, 2, 3, 4 people to do this. So you need to make sure that you've got the right blend of skills across that to kind of get on with your day-to-day that you want to be doing. So kind of on the technical side of things you need to be doing at this point, loading your primary data sets, beginning work on some of your POCs, making some key technical decisions. This is all about finding your feet and what you're going to do. And that making key technical decision bits is quite important. While you can switch things around later, fundamentally, if you spend hours and hours, say, writing everything you want to build in Java, and then you later on decide actually you want to do everything in Python instead because that better matches your longer term roadmap, it makes it easier to hire the kind of skills and people you want, or say vice versa for that scenario. You don't really want to be rewriting everything that you've just been putting in place and doing. It wastes a lot of time. It takes a lot longer than people always give it credit for taking. So try stuff out and kind of find what's right for you. And that might already be established in the organization, so that's easy. But if it's not, you need to figure out what languages am I going to use, what platforms do I want to use, how am I going to tackle my ETL, should we buy a tool or should we build it ourselves? Like all those kind of decisions you want to get out of the woodwork as early on as possible so that you don't get locked into a situation you don't want to be in and have loads and loads of rework to do. And working on those POCs and use cases, in our previous step, we've just promised a load of really important people in the business that we're going to make them loads of money, and we've got some really good value-driving stuff that we're going to do. We need to do some of those and start to show early signs that what we said is possible to solve. It's not saying complete it, it's a POC. It's show that it's possible, prove the concept works before you start scaling up. In the bottom right here, kind of working through bugs and building in data ingestion frameworks. First thing you're going to have to do for any data platform, get data on the platform. And that doesn't happen overnight, and it isn't always as easy as people like to make out. So whether, again, you build it yourself, whether you buy an ETL tool, however you choose to go about doing that, whatever's the right fit for your organization, it's one of the first things you're going to do. It's something that's going to be going on for the life of the entire platform. You're always going to be ingesting data. So build it right. Make sure that it does error handling and logging properly. Build in things like audit file checks so that you know that you're receiving data completely and loading it accurately and so on. Because the sooner you do that, the easier life is going to be throughout the course of the project. And no matter how much our vendors promise us that everything works brilliantly, whatever you pick, you're going to find loads of bugs with whatever you want to do. And you're going to spend quite a bit of time at the start working around those, understanding where they are and fixing them. So you kind of need to go in eyes open to that so that you can prep your stakeholders that you're going to spend a good bit of time like fixing stuff that just doesn't work in some of the new technologies you're probably working with. In the background to all of that, your kind of delivery team getting off the ground and doing some of the actual build out of your platform. There's a softer side to bringing data into the business and making it successful. That this journey, this platform, this capability you're building isn't something that lives in isolation. And if you're building a general data analytics capability, it's a good chance you've got users from across the business that want to have access to the platform to do things. So starting to create an analytics community, and you don't have to be strict on the entry criteria for that. People who have an interest in data, in using data, whether at the moment perhaps they just are using spreadsheets to do some little things, or maybe they're already using a reporting tool you've got, or have a background in writing SQL or Python data science work. Start bringing that group of people together, get them meeting, get them helping inform the direction that your platform's going to take, and start kind of building buy-in, not just at the top level of the business, but kind of out in the foot soldiers of your team. And as part of that, market your function to the business. Like you got to sell what you're doing. So get out there and advertise to people what you're doing. Run lunch and learn sessions that people can come along to, that you can show off the latest and greatest thing that you guys have just built. Do little training sessions for people if they want to know more about the technology. Do senior briefings to the different heads of departments so that they know what you're building, what's coming, and that they can get involved early on and help define the direction this is going to go. So the sooner you start laying that groundwork, you want everyone talking about your team like you're the most collaborative, innovative people in the business, that you're really great to work with, so that there's just hum about what you're doing. It makes everything else that comes afterwards much easier if everyone is bought in as you go along. So at this point, you're kind of, you've got a platform, you've got some data on it, you're doing some things, you've got a team and a capability. You're probably still quite small and immature, but you're starting to show that you can do something. and that you can do what you promised and delivered. So you need to now cement the platform and make sure that it's not going anywhere, that in the next year's budget they don't go, nice experiment, but thanks, we're done, we're closing this down. So this kind of stage is all about taking that initial growth that you've done and finding a killer use case, something that the business now can't live without, about building complete trust in your data and in your output so that when stuff has come from your platform, when someone sees a report or a statistic and it's come from you and your platform, people trust it instinctively, because if people don't trust it, your platform is worth nothing at all. There's no point doing anything if people don't believe the results that you tell them in it. So there's a whole load of stuff here. Your team is probably starting to grow at this point. You need to start bringing in more people. And that could reflect however you've started. So maybe you've been really tech heavy at the start. You've brought in a lot of really good software engineers. Perhaps you need to start branching out into people who are maybe bigger picture solution architecture thinkers. Maybe you need to bring in BAs or TAs to help start understanding requirements better. It might be at this point you actually need a project manager, a scrum master, however you're kind of tackling project management. You need to start actually making that a bit more of a real thing and bringing in the team. And you'll change your team structure. So that core team of people that have started building stuff, the best way to run that is quite flat. Don't stick hierarchies in. Don't stick fixed like roles and responsibilities. Everyone should just be mucking in. It's a whole load of stuff to do. At this point, you need to probably start creating a bit of a better structure around your business and within your team so that it's a bit clearer what responsibilities are. You can manage what's going on a bit clearer. You can start to understand the rate of work and development that you can do. So that team structure is going to evolve, and the growth within that team is going to increase. Establishing a killer use case is all about finding that one thing that is invaluable to the business. So in my previous role, I came from Marks & Spencer's, and I put in the Cloudera platform there, and there's some Marks & Spencer's people at the back. Our killer use case was the Sparks loyalty scheme, which, love it or hate it, it made a fair bit of money for M&S. And we put big data at the center of that. So all customer analytics, all insight, anything driving marketing, you did it in big data and you shared it out to other systems. It was the brain of the loyalty program. That was our killer use case because it made it an essential piece of M&S, and the value that it's driving was undoubted as part of that. So we kind of knew we had a really, really solid foundation to build on there because we knew that the kind of basics of the platform and the team weren't in doubt, and that let us then expand the use cases and grow. For you, that might be not a money-driving thing. It might be a risk or compliance problem. It might be a really boring use case, like you need to store loads and loads of history that you still need access to. It's too expensive to do it somewhere else, so you're going to do it on a big data platform. Like, boring, but lots of businesses need to do that. And if that means that your platform isn't going anywhere and gives you the freedom to work on other stuff, then go after it, do it, and do it really well. HR roles as well is quite an interesting one to do. You've been growing a platform, but out there's a team of users that's probably starting to go around, and your business is probably thinking about data science and analytics, and it doesn't necessarily have those roles in place as something on the books that you can pick when you're hiring someone. And there's a good chance that your HR team doesn't necessarily understand what an analyst is, what a data scientist is, maybe even simpler things like what a data engineer is, how valuable they are and how much you need to pay, what kind of level they should be in the business, all those kind of stuff. If you don't work with them to get that right, you're just going to piss off your talent in the end, because they're not going to have the right career paths to grow with you and to develop themselves, to earn the kind of money they want to be earning that they can be earning elsewhere. So getting that in place formally and understanding that is really important to the growth of your team and of your business in that data and analytics kind of space. I've kind of already mentioned how important trust is, but trust is a very difficult thing to earn and a very quick thing to lose. So you need to be both managing that technically, that on your day-to-day basis you're monitoring data quality, whether you do that with kind of reporting tools so that you can compare data sets. As I mentioned, on your ingest frameworks, make sure that when you're ingesting data, you're checking it, comparing it. You know, you gave us 1 million rows today, we loaded 1 million rows. We've got 10 million in total now. That matches up with the source system so that you're really confident in your data. That's like just an ongoing, constant thing you're always going to have to do and can never stop. And you really, really want to try and minimize any of those incidents where data's wrong just because you've been a bit sloppy. It's a boring bit to work on often, but it's one of those things that can completely end a platform and a team's kind of reputation if you're not really careful. Load more data, that's going to be on like every single page that we go through, but you never stop. There's always going to be more data sources to go after, so you should be constantly, just have a little stream of work going on to bring in more and more data into the platform. You should have something in mind to do with that data. It's easy to just say like, oh, just go after everything. I don't quite buy into that. I think you should be able to see how it's going to join up with stuff you've already got, or what you might do in terms of a use case with that at some point in the future. Because there's nothing better than a business team coming to you being like, we think we want to do this use case and we'd need this, and you're like, yeah, we've got all of that already, like off you go, we don't have to do anything. That's an amazing position to be in. It makes you look incredibly competent as a team, and it really speaks to how good the platform is. At this point as well, you're probably starting to think about kind of operationalizing your platform, which is very difficult to do sometimes, and you're going to have to make decisions depending on, again, how your business is structured. Maybe there's a central support team and they want to take ownership of it. Maybe you want to keep control of it. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to do that without sacrificing the quality of service that you can deliver, but you do need to potentially get to, say, 24/7 coverage. If you found that killer use case that the business can't live without, you better make sure that you've got it all the time and that you can recover quickly when there's a problem. And the last really boring thing, document everything. First stage or so, you won't have written anything down, you're going to be too busy, but there's nothing like having actual proper documentation that when people come into the team, you can make them read. When you need to fix something, you know how it works and how to fix it. Or when you've got to pass it over to that third party support team, you've got it written down. It's really, really helpful. And again, it just helps build that trust, makes you look like a competent team, and gets people convinced that the platform is good and it's working. So the penultimate phase in my journey here is expanding the use cases. So at this point, you've got a pretty good team. It's grown quite a lot. You've got a really good use case out there that's delivering value for your business. You've started to operationalize it. This point is about kind of continuing that development in terms of growing the team, growing the platform's capabilities, and so on. It's about cleaning up the mess, because you've built up a load of technical debt over the last few months and years as you've been doing this. So going back and just trying to sort some of that stuff out that maybe you built early on and has still been running and is a bit rubbish. And just generally kind of cementing the platform in terms of putting the finer edges on details, but also continuing to show value from the platform, and new value that keeps adding on and keeps showing that there's more to do and there's more capability in there. So removing technical debt, like technical debt sucks, you're going to build it up. Just have a little work stream, maybe just one person spending 1 week a month just rewriting old stuff, for example. Keep refining your team and keep growing the team if you need to. Obviously, you might be at a sufficient point, you can keep up with demand, then don't grow it anymore. But you're probably still, if you're bringing in new use cases, if you're continuing to have teams within the business come to you to do new stuff, you're probably needing to keep up your delivery offering and your capability. Keep bringing in new capabilities. So part of the reason that you started this journey is because the legacy technology that you had in your business wasn't up to scratch anymore and you needed to do something new. You don't want to get yourself into that position, and you don't want to be the legacy technology in a couple of years' time. So keeping on top of trends, what's going on, the latest technologies that you should be using, and in continuing to enhance those capabilities will help make sure that you continue to be relevant for quite a long time before there's a huge fundamental paradigm shift and kind of processing data as we know it completely takes a turn and you need to switch to something else. Transitioning to BAU at this point, so you just like find your rhythm, find the way you're going to manage work in, find the way you're going to deliver it, know how your support model operates, and just kind of be really comfortable with the ongoing delivery of work in the team. Just you should look really slick when people come in and they want to engage with you. You can just lay out, here's how it works. We go from this to this to this. It goes into support. You get your stuff. It's done. Tightening governance as well is, again, an area that none of us really want to work on. But coming back to that trust point, and with things like GDPR and all the stuff you need to do under data governance when it comes to security and privacy and auditing, at this point it's probably worth turning your eyes to that a little bit and figuring out how far short you're falling of the standards that you want to meet, and kind of just putting some of that stuff in place. Again, it's not really exciting. It might be up to you. There might be teams in the business who look after, say, cybersecurity or data governance that you need to be engaging with. And if you can engage with them earlier on, great. So the kind of final bit, and there's no lines that are going to come off this one, is about planning for the future. And this is a theme that should just be running from day one on your project, because you always need to be looking ahead to what are you going to do next, whether that is from a team perspective, what are the roles you need to bring in, what are the people you need to bring in, from a technology perspective, are you needing to maybe shift from an on-prem solution to a cloud vendor, or perhaps AWS no longer meets your needs and you want to move over to Azure, or you were on a scalable data warehouse and you want to move to a Hadoop solution, whatever it is, change, or it's use cases. So maybe you started where I've been kind of talking, creating just a general data lakes capability, and you want to start moving into event streaming and real-time analytics, or machine learning and AI as a use case. That planning for the future, you'd kind of just constantly have an evolving roadmap of where you're going to be in 3 months, 1 year, and 3 years. A nice way to kind of structure and think about that stuff. More detail in the short term, less in the long term, but more visionary in terms of where you think industry's going. So all the stuff you hear today and some of the other talks, think about how that's going to impact you, whether you need to be doing it. And kind of to touch on some of the earlier themes, you just want to keep doing something different. Keep adding something new and keeping the platform and the team really relevant in your business, so that people just want to work with you, and that the value you deliver as a platform and as a team is undeniable to anyone who looks in on it. So we've got about 2 minutes, I think, until we need to wrap up, but I'll happily take any questions you've got now. I'll stick around for a second at the end, and I will be over on my stand if you want to swing by afterwards. But thank you very much for your time today, everyone. I hope this was useful for you.